Hi, everybody. Welcome back. I'm very excited about this lesson. Today, we're going to be practicing how to paint a lighthouse. So I painted this, I don't know, I guess a little while ago, and I've been wanting to work on it with you guys. We've just been trying to figure out a good time to do it because it's kind of a lengthy one. So I have no intention of finishing this in one sitting. I think this is going to be a two-sitting project. So let's talk about the supplies that you're going to need. This one's got quite a bit of supplies involved with it. So what you're going to need is we would have sent out a reference picture that you can print out. So this is already inked out, so it's nice and clean and harsh. We're going to use this to be able to trace. So you're going to need a copy of this, and depending on how many of you are doing the project, so if there's more than one person working on it, you may need to copy this a few times because if you're going to trace it, I find that every time you trace it, the lines get a little fatter. And so if you have the option, print it out a couple times. That way each person can be tracing it themselves. You're gonna need some watercolor paper. So today is my first opportunity on painting the Arteza paper. Let's see if I can get it out. Miss Gia got me this pad and it's a new paper. I have not tried it before. Usually I've been using the Canson watercolor pad for most of the projects. So I've been using this one for most of our beginning watercolor projects. But I will be using this one today. I used this in the cherry project earlier, but this is going to be the test. I always feel like watercolor paper has to go through tests, in my opinion, to I don't know, either they pass or they don't. And the real big test is when you fill in the whole sheet. So this will be a full sheet project. So we're going to be filling in the entire thing with water. And so the paper behaves differently. And the more water you put on it, you can really kind of see what it's made of. So that's the paper I'm going to be using today to paint the lighthouse, which I've never done before, so that'll be new for me. So you're going to need to get a sheet out of it, which I've already done. You are also going to need some salt. I hope that we will get down to the grass area sometime today. I don't know, we may not, depends how long everything takes, but you're going to need some kosher salt. I've said before, table salt will work, but kosher is preferred. That's going to give it a little bit chunkier, better texture. So if you have kosher and mom doesn't mind you taking some, just pour into a little bit of a container and grab some kosher salt. You're also going to need a pencil and an eraser, and you're going to need a ruler. You're also going to need a regular pencil. So if you've been deliberately, like me, using a mechanical, this is going to be for our fine-tuned drawing, but you're going to need this, like a regular Ticonderoga pencil or whatnot, if you're going to do one of the tracing techniques that I'm going to run through with you. So two different kinds of pencils, and I have an eraser and a ruler. So like I said, we're already racking up the supplies here. You're going to need a brush. Now, if you have the option of having more than one brush, like a small one and a large one, see if you can grab both. If you only have one, then we only have one, and we'll just use what we have. But if you have the option, grab two brushes. Grab a small brush and a large brush. Actually, I have to grab my large brush. I think I only have my small one. Okay, so you need two brushes. I'm going to be using different paint today. So basically all of the projects leading up to this one, I have been using the Crayola paint palette, which I said the colors have been pretty good. I did the cherries earlier with this. So if this is what you have, that's okay. I will try to talk about the different colors and how to mix them if this is what you have. But today I'm using my at-home palette. So this is the palette I use whenever I paint in the studio, or if I actually paint. Actually, I think the Lighthouse I did use. This is my palette. So this is the one I use. It's pretty big, and it's porcelain. So I love mixing on here because the colors are just, I don't know, they move really pretty. So I'll be using my nice big one today. And it's got some different brands in there, which if you guys have questions about it, I'll always try to answer what colors I'm using. Okay, so if everybody's ready, get out your watercolor paper that you're going to work on. So here are the options. You have two ways to get your image onto the watercolor paper, and we'll be using this time. It'll probably take us around 10 minutes or so to get this traced out. So you can either you get your piece of paper that has the printout of the lighthouse. You're going to turn it around. And what I've done is I've taken, this is where the regular pencil comes into play. You need to grab your regular HB, like Ticonderoga pencil, and you're going to just apply the graphite all along the back side, only where your lighthouse is. You don't need to do the whole paper. We're sort of making our own sort of transfer paper. And you're just going to fill in this whole large rectangle piece with the graphite, okay? That's one way. If you have a window near you and you don't mind doing this, what you can do is you'll take, I think I talked about this earlier, but I don't know if I was recording. You take this printout and you put this up on the window, and you're actually gonna have to apply a small piece of tape towards the top so it doesn't move. Then you take your watercolor paper and then you lay that on top, and then you tape it so it doesn't move. And then you take your pencil and then you trace out all of the lighthouse. So whichever way you're going to do it, I want you to go ahead and start on it. So I'm going to keep continuing on working on the trace transfer paper since I don't have to leave my table that way. So that's what I'm going to be doing. We're going to spend a good about 10 minutes to do this, and I'll wait for you guys to get back and then we'll start painting. So I already started this. I want to say that if you guys are doing this method, but any method, frankly, but if you're doing this method where you use sort of the mock transfer paper, be careful to not push too hard. If you guys push too hard, you will leave an indent on the paper and it never goes back. So be gentle. I would also, this is where the ruler comes into play. Whether you're doing it on the window or on the table like this, like I am, this is where your ruler comes into play. I would use your ruler for the edges, for all these straight lines inside here and the outside of the lighthouse and all the straight lines inside here. I would use the ruler because I tried doing this without the ruler. Maybe it's just me, but I found more times than not I was very wobbly. And then you just have to erase, draw, erase, draw, erase, draw, and that just takes forever. So just use the ruler. It'll save you some time.
You have a question, Miss Anna. Someone is asking what colors we're going to be using. Did you go through that and we missed it already, or we're not there yet?
I didn't talk about it yet, but I will gladly talk about it now as I'm sort of working. If you guys have sort of the tubes, so sort of like these, yes, there are some specific colors I would like you to grab. And if you don't have them, we'll talk about, you know, what to swap out or dupes or whatnot. If you have tubes, I want you to get out either cerulean blue or cobalt. If you have neither, then you can grab ultramarine blue. That will work just fine. Most every palette has ultramarine blue. If you have, this would be if you have a palette like a, oh, you buy sets, like that's the word I'm looking for. Sometimes when you buy watercolor sets, they contain this color, and if it's a large enough set, they'll have it. If it's too small, it's not going to have it, so don't worry about it. Permanent rose is a lovely color, and I use this in the sky a lot. If you have permanent rose, grab it. If you don't, same thing, it's fine. It just means your sky will be a little more on the blue side and it won't have any pinky, purpley hues to it, and that's fine. We will also be using, look at this. It's brand based. So the colors that I used in here was Winsor Newton has a brand called it's Winsor Red. I think a good close color to it is cadmium red. So if you guys have cadmium red or alizarin red, both of those will work. And I can always talk about this again as we continue on. I also used burnt sienna or burnt umber. Most palettes contain at least one of those. I think down here in the grass, I think I used cadmium yellow, and I can't remember if I used ultramarine or cobalt in my green. And then I think I might have used some green out of the tube, which is usually like either a sap green or a hooker's green. Both are really good greens. So if you have a combination of all those colors, that's what I would be using. But most palettes and most sort of starter kits have at least a few of those colors. And if you're going along and you find that you're missing some of those colors that I mentioned, just tell me what you have, and we can work on what mixes to use to get what we would like. Everyone's picture is going to turn out a little different depending on what colors are in their palette. And if anyone's heard me in class talk about watercolors, I've discussed the fact that even I just threw off a bunch of names of colors, right? Ultramarine, cobalt. Not every brand's color looks the same. So some colors I find tend to look the same no matter who made it. Ultramarine is one of them. I find it tends to look the same basically in every brand. But colors like cobalt and cerulean and cadmium red are really susceptible to being entirely different depending on who makes them. So your guys's paintings are gonna look different, even though you're gonna be using colors that I tell you to use. So it's okay, don't worry if your painting doesn't have the same color or feel to it that mine does. They're gonna look different. So unless you're using exactly the same brand of paint I'm using, which I don't expect you guys to be, it's gonna look a little different.
I'm sorry, Miss Anna, I forgot which brand you said you're using today.
I didn't mention it, so that's okay. I am using two brands. So these are the brands that I personally use all the time. I'm using Winsor Newton Professional. So there's Winsor Newton Cotman and Winsor Newton Professional. I use the Professional.
Miss
I
Anna?
also, yes,
Oh.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, Celeste says that she doesn't have cadmium red. Cadmium red, only vermilion and crimson.
And Lena
Okay.
says she doesn't have the right green. So maybe you'll have to, as we go through these colors, maybe you'll have to explain, okay, if you don't have this one,
Yep.
just individually, rather than go through every single color right now that people don't have.
Yep. No, that's fine, you guys. So if you guys don't have the same colors that I'm talking about, right away I can tell you this is totally going to work. Like I said, it's going to be a little different, but we're going to make do. What I am going to tell you to do is if you guys are bored and you've managed to finish the tracing, what I want you to do is get an extra piece of paper as a test, because you're going to have to test some colors out. You're going to have to see what your color looks like, and when it's mixed with other colors that I'm going to mention, what does it do?
And Miss Anna,
Yep.
Would that happen best on the exact same kind of paper that we're printing our, okay.
Yeah. If you have more of the paper that we're using to do our Lighthouse on, that's what I would like you to use for your test. But we're all going to test together. That way we can all sort of troubleshoot and see what kind of colors we've got going on. Now I will tell you guys, I'm doing this with you just so I'm not sitting here doing nothing, but I already traced mine out earlier. So now I'll have two. Oh, something I did not mention, which I know is kind of probably pointless now because we've just started. I started my Lighthouse. I scooted him up to the top so that I actually have more grass. So my little sketch on this paper is really tiny. Like the grass isn't very big. But I did that deliberately because if you look in the original, I have a lot of grass. So it's okay if your pen area is small on the paper, but it's like 2 inches if I'm counting in my watercolor paper. So if you didn't and you scooted down, it's fine. It just means you have more sky versus more grass. It's not a right or wrong. So it's okay. Do not panic if all of a sudden you put it too far down. You're fine.
I kind of have to change my station because I can't be in this area for long.
Okay, you can, that's totally fine. Now would be a better time to do it because I'm going to be spending like another 5 minutes on this. So if you want to just, move your location right now, honey, you can do that.
Okay.
I was going to tell you guys on the sketch, I was tired last night and my tracing job was not the most perfect in the world. If you are noticing up here at the top where I did the angle, there's like double lines. Dose lines. Pick the one that's the most straight and maybe it's neither of them. And this is why we will be fixing a little bit once we're done tracing, either on the window or on the paper like this. You're going to be spending a few minutes fixing anything that maybe I did wrong in the trace because I'm not sure it was quite perfect. and or maybe you traced a little bit wobbly. We always spend a few minutes fixing the drawing before you begin painting. So bear that in mind as we're going along as well. Okay, so I'm almost done. How's everybody else doing?
We got a couple questions.
Yep, what's up?
Is there a correct side of the paper?
There absolutely is. And unfortunately, without being there, I can't tell you. Every paper is a little different, but a good sort of rule of thumb is look at your paper. So like my Arteza paper is really noticeable. It is ridiculously smooth on the back side, and on the correct side, it has texture. So most papers do that, but every brand is a little different. I have to say Arteza, this is really impressive. It's like almost cardstock on the back, and then the front has more texture. So yes, there is a right and a wrong side, and unfortunately, it can make a huge difference. So it's good to know which side you're painting on. I have accidentally not caught students fast enough, and they started painting a project on the incorrect side, and it doesn't behave properly at all. So take a moment to try to maybe figure out if your pad is near you, go look at your pad of paper and sort of study it, feel it, and you should be able to see which is the top and which is the bottom. That's also why all my students always laughed at me and thought I was doing something weird. I will usually draw a squiggly line on the back side of the paper, pardon me, just so I know that's the back. But this paper is really easy to tell what the back is. Some papers are really hard to tell what the back is. And so I will automatically just mark it with a pencil so that I don't forget.
There was another question about the kind of pink.
Okay.
What kind of pink are we using? Pink?
So the pink that I would like you to use, if you have it, is Permanent Rose. So if you have Permanent Rose, that's the one that I'll be using. And I think for next time, you guys, and then that was my fault, I will try to actually send a color list next time so that you guys know what colors I plan on using for the project. Okay, how's everybody else? Because if you guys are done, I'll just stop tracing and I'll just use the one I already did.
Maybe you guys can give us a thumbs up.
Yeah, because if everyone's thumbs up, then I will stop. I don't need to keep tracing just for me. Okay, so I finished with this one. So I don't know if it shows up terribly well on the camera, but this is the sketch done with the tracing transfer paper style. So it does work. And this is so this is a trick, you guys. This now, tuck this away into your little memory banks as we continue on with these projects, because they will get more complicated. And sometimes I don't expect you guys to be able to draw them freehand all the time. So I will be sending out projects like this that are already scanned, and then you can just trace them. And then you need to remember how to trace them. You can either trace it on the paper with like your makeshift transfer paper or a window. Both work wonderful. And I have one of my students has a light board that works too. So if you actually have a light board, use that for some of our projects, because it's a great way to save some time and get those projects out. Okay, I'm gonna switch my papers out because I already did one earlier. And because if I have to, my biased, I don't love the tracing transfer paper one, only because it tends to apply more graphite than I like. If that's the only option to you, it's gonna work. And I did it for years with my students. I just find that it's not my favorite. All right, so before I go crazy on redrawing all of my shapes and possibly fixing things, I'm gonna tape down. So everybody, that is your next task. Grab some masking tape, and you need to tape all 4 corners completely, because this is gonna be very wet and it will bubble like crazy if you don't tape it.
And if they don't have pink, what are they supposed to do? Just mix it?
You can either use alizarin crimson is a really good alternative, or honestly, none. You can just use none. Then our sky will just be more blue, and that's perfectly fine. But here's where we're gonna spend a little bit of time practicing our colors. So we're gonna try them out because you need to know whether or not you like the look of alizarin crimson mixed in with your blues, or if you would rather just mix it out all together and just use blue. I've done the skies with just blue before. So don't think that you're missing out too badly just because you don't have the pink. It will look lovely without the pink. Okay, so a reminder about taping, you guys, try to tape the borders as evenly as possible. It just makes it look really pretty when you take it off. If all the sides are, you know, 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, whatever it is. Okay, so now is your time to do a couple of things. So I'll have you guys doing several things. I'm gonna get my pad of paper and we're gonna talk about colors really briefly. If you're already set and you know what colors you're gonna do, you can just work on finishing out your lighthouse and clean up any lines that didn't work out, or there's an area where something's too dark, erase it, lighten it up. You work on that, but I'm gonna work on talking about colors. So let's go through all the colors together, you guys. So I'm gonna grab my brush that disappeared. There we go. Okay. Oh. And I might only have a baby brush with me today, I don't know. Okay, so here's my pad of paper that's gonna be my test. So yellow should be pretty easy. All of you guys should have yellow. So test out your yellow. This one's mine. This is my, technically this is Hansa yellow, but it's very close to cadmium. So test your yellow out. Did I say yellow? Yellow?
Ask Anna.
Emma wants to know if she's supposed to tape the paper to her desk.
Is your hair dryer, can it reach your desk? Because if it can't reach your desk, then I wouldn't. But if your hair dryer can reach your desk, absolutely. I do that all the time.
And is there a difference between masking tape and just regular tape?
It depends what your regular tape is. If your regular tape is like Scotch tape, like that clear white tape, then yes. Otherwise, no. I do advise people to be careful with the Scotch tape. I'm not saying you can't ever use it. I think I've seen a few people use it, but depending on the kind of paper and depending on your tape, it can rip your paper badly. So be careful with the Scotch tape. That's that clear stuff. But any sort of masking tape, sort of like this, I've even seen some people use blue tape. I can't say blue tape's my favorite because it's really strong. So it has a tendency to rip the paper. But I mean, you guys can experiment with any kind of masking tape sort of like this at home. And I've tried lots of different brands and you just get used to the kind of brand and preferences. I have to say the stronger the tape, usually it's bad only because it tends to rip. So just be really careful when you take it off so it doesn't rip off. Okay, so here's my yellow. Now, this is a color that not everybody has, but let's try it if you do. I have cerulean blue. So this is what my cerulean blue looks like. This is one of the colors I was thinking of for your sky. Okay, so that's my cerulean.
What if you don't have that color?
Do you have cobalt? That's the next one.
I only have ultramarine.
Perfect. Put a little ultramarine on your test card. I'm going to showcase 3 different blues, and you should have at least one of them. Everybody's kit has ultramarine. That's like a really
ultramarine
popular color. Well, I didn't hear the question.
Can we do ultramarine and cobalt?
Absolutely. So in my opinion, for the sky to look really pretty, I think more than one color is best. So if you have 2 blues, that's what I would like you to do. But I'm going to talk about one blue that I'm not sure we'll use, but you can. I think I might have to pull it out because it's in my Crayola kit. So this is my ultramarine. So I have cerulean, cobalt, and ultramarine. You can just see how the ultramarine is really dark. right?
I don't have ultramarine.
What do you have, honey?
I have something that's called cobalt, but it's kind of grayish. And then I have something called Persian blue.
Prussian, maybe?
Yeah, Prussian. Sorry, it looks like Persian.
That's okay. So everyone's color is different. So I think this is my Prussian or this is my indigo. I can't remember. Mine's very green. Do you see this? So I think this is my Prussian. It could be my indigo. I don't remember.
Lena
So
has a question.
Yes.
So going back to the yellow, I have 2 different kinds of yellow, and they're none of the ones that you said, and I'm kind of confused.
What you got?
I have yellow and lemon yellow.
Perfect. Lemon yellow will be great. So this is my lemon. So my lemon is just a little bit lighter than the cadmium and looks like it's dirty because it looks kind of green. This is my lemon. Okay, that will work.
All right.
Okay, well, moving on to my reds. So the red that I have is called Windsor Red. You're not going to have this unless you have my particular paint, but you might have cadmium. So here's what mine is. So see if you have a paint that looks like this. Think the quintessential lipstick red or candy apple red. See if you have something even close to this.
Do you think crimson would work?
Yes, so crimson can go lots of ways. Crimson is usually like an alizarin. So here's my alizarin. My alizarin is very berry, and which is fine. I like my crimson. It's just, you can see the difference. Here's my alizarin. Do you see how much cooler it is? It's kind of like a berry. So crimson can go either way. It will work. So here's my crimson. Because usually if it just says crimson, it's technically short for alizarin crimson. So that's mine. Okay, I'm moving down to my browns. Oh, I'll show you what my pink looks like. This is the pink that I don't expect a lot of you to have, but if you have it, only if. This is my pink. It's a permanent rose. It's very pretty. And it sounds like, does anyone have this color? Because if no one has it, I'm just not going to put it in my sky. You have it, Addison. Does anyone else have it?
I don't.
John has it.
Okay, so a couple of people do. Okay, so I will probably paint this sky twice for demo's sake, and I'll paint it once without and once with. It will look fine, you guys, so you don't have to have pink. Okay, now I got browns. So this is my burnt sienna. I use burnt sienna a lot. It's part of the reason it's like mostly gone. So my burnt sienna is quite warm. So something like this. I use this in mixtures mostly. I don't know that I even use this color by itself. I think I used it a lot in mixtures. So again, burnt sienna, burnt umber, they vary so much depending on the brand. Here's my burnt umber. So you guys might have an umber versus a sienna. This is my umber. See how much darker it is? Umber should be darker than sienna. Okay, so there's my umber. Let's see, what other color did I say? Oh, greens. So here's my sap, and we're gonna talk about how to make green if you don't have it. Here's mine. So here's sap. It's just a lovely green. Right? It's kind of like a very true quintessential green, very pretty. I'm not actually sure if I even have Hooker's green. I think I only have sap. Yeah, I only have sap, so that's fine. So I bet I made most of my green anyway, so you guys are good. So let's talk about how to mix a pretty green. So does anybody have a weird color that's called like phthalo or Prussian?
We got a phthalo over here.
Primary? Any kind of keywords like that?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Is anybody, how about anyone who says no, raise your hand or something. No, Anna, you don't have one?
No, I only have deep green and sap green.
Oh, sap green will work great. What's your, test out your deep green. Your deep green might have, I don't know, see if it has more brown in it or more blue in it.
All right.
Okay.
My sap green is really warm and more brown than green.
Okay.
So is there like an alternative that might be more true green?
Nope. We're going to talk about how to doctor it. So let's do that. That's what we're going to do right now.
I have Viridian green.
Viridian is usually more more emeraldy, so it's a bit more of an artificial color. So if you guys have anything like emerald or viridian, you're going to need to put blue and brown into it in order to make a more of an earthy green. But let's talk about how to do that, okay? So let's talk about doctoring. So I just gave you a bunch of my colors that I have, and I know you might not have everything. So let's start talking about what you can do to mix. So let's start with the sky, okay? And we talked about that first. If you guys have ultramarine, we'll be wetting it and we'll be putting down a very light wash of the blue, okay? Very pretty. If you have one of the weird ones that kind of looks green, which usually it's called like indigo or phthalo, see, very pretty, okay? That will work as well. This doesn't matter. If you guys have ultramarine, if you have phthalo, both will work beautifully. I have cerulean. I'm going to mix my cerulean and my ultramarine together, and I get a very sort of neutral, pretty blue. Okay. So I want you to try. Just figure out which one you like, because maybe you have more than one blue in your kit. Try one and pick what you like. I'll be doing two paintings, two skies. Well, two skies. I'm not going to paint both paintings. I will do one sky with my cerulean, like my mix. Cerulean blue, cobalt, and permanent rose. On the other sky, I will just use ultramarine blue. Okay, that way most of you have that, and I think you'll make a beautiful sky even just with ultramarine. Okay. All right. So find out what the blue you want, and then we're going to talk about. I think well, do you guys all feel comfortable with your red, or was there some confusion about the red?
There was some.
Some confusion.
Yeah.
Okay.
Dana's got a question.
Yeah, it's about the pink. So I do actually have a pink.
Okay.
But I don't know if I should use it or not. It's I can't even read it.
Try it. This is what we're doing right now is we are testing colors. So try it. You won't know what it looks like until you try it. So
Okay.
what I would like you to do is try it by itself, just so you can see what the undertones are. We're gonna try and train your eye, right? See what it looks like. Does it look hot? Does it look cold? Then try mixing it with whichever blue you decided you're gonna use. Try mixing them together. Does it look horrendous, or does it look, oh, that's very pretty? Okay, if it looks pretty, we're gonna use it.
All right.
Okay, that's for everybody. Whatever red you have in your palette, I want you to take a moment and try it with your blue. The reason I picked permanent rose is that when it's mixed with the blues, it's very soft, very pretty. Alizarin crimson, when mixed with ultramarine, can sometimes be a little dark and a little much, like kind of goes a little muddy sometimes, depending on the tone of the alizarin. That's why I didn't say to mix it, but now is your time to try it. I want you guys to be independent. Try on your test card, decide if the alizarin and your blue, whatever blue you have, looks good together. That's your job right now. Decide if it looks good together. So I'll show you. I haven't done my alizarin in a while. Let's try my alizarin with ultramarine. So my alizarin and my blue, it's just a very dull purple. That's why I'm not using it. But if this is all you have, I mean, it's still pretty. It's just not what I was looking for myself. But I can, yes, I heard a question.
I got a nice red by mixing the crimson red and vermilion together.
Perfect. So this purple was my cerulean and my alizarin. It's very gray. And this is my purple with cobalt and alizarin. So you guys, this is the kind of stuff you need to get familiar with your paint. So you have to just know what you have and what you can work with. Every artist, so I like looking through watercolor books and reading every kind of artist's different palette, so different colors they like to use. They're never the same, you guys. So even though I will talk to you about what colors that we're using in our palette and what I'm painting with, that's just me. So you have to decide at some point, you know, I've had teachers that where we had very specific colors because we had very specific projects we were finishing and they all needed to look the same. And that's different. But at some point when you're painting on your own, you can use whatever color you want. So you just have to decide, do this, play around with your colors and figure out which ones you like, okay? All right, so I think the last thing was we talked about a green, and then I think we spent enough time. We should just move on and start painting. So green, you can make green several different ways with several different colors, okay? So if you have one of the hotter greens, which was kind of my indigo-y sort of color, I think it was this guy over here, he's very warm. If you mix him with yellow, you're gonna get a very pretty sort of warm green, okay? Very pretty. Most people have this on their palettes, not everybody. Something like it, phthalo, primary, Prussian, okay, something like that. If you don't, I want you to try right now. Ultramarine, almost everybody has ultramarine. Mix it in with your yellow. You're gonna see that it's not, it's very earthy. There's nothing wrong with it, it's just very earthy. It's not usually the blue I choose to use unless I want an earthy tone to it, okay? And the next one that I do use is cerulean or cobalt mixed into my green or into my yellow. It gets me kind of a very happy, bright green. Very light, very bright. Lastly is doctoring. So if I doctor a color, it means I use something straight out of the tube. So I'm using my sap and I can add to it blue. I think I'm gonna add cobalt. And I've just earthed it up here. I'll put it next to the other one. See how it's a little bit darker? It's a little more blue. So you can always change your colors by adding a little bit of blue or brown into them, kind of like that. All right, is there any major questions? Otherwise, we're gonna get started.
My cobalt is really dark, almost ultramarine dark.
Yeah, so if you're, and that's very common. So cobalts can look a lot like ultramarine. You might not use it then, or decide which one you like better. So you're probably really, really close, but there's probably a little difference, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Just decide which one you like better, and I would just stick with whichever one you like the looks of better.
Okay.
One of the brands I use in class, I can't remember if it's Reeves or something else. It's same problem. The cobalt and the ultramarine are like ridiculously close. Okay. Is everybody ready? I just cleaned off my palette because it was a mess. So if you did a lot of mixing like I did, you probably made a mess as well. So please clean off your palette. Okay. So I can't remember if I talked about this beginning of class, but I told everybody, so I'll be doing this painting 2 times in the sky. If you have a squirt bottle handy with just water, we're gonna use that. If you don't, that's fine. You can just watch me do it this one time. And then you can wait for the next painting where I will do just a brush sky. So I like to use this, and it's actually what I used in my sky that I painted myself. It really leaves these little pockets, these little happy white pockets, because when you spray it, it doesn't fully saturate the paper. It leaves little pockets of dry paper underneath. And that's what gives that really fluffy sort of texture for the clouds. So if you have a squirt bottle, this is a really fun technique to do. If you don't sweat it. It's okay. It's not gonna be the end of the world. Just something fun to do. So here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna spray my sky. I'm not gonna worry if it goes into the top portion of this lighthouse because you can see the background in here. So I actually have to paint right through here in order to get that sky through here. So I'm gonna give this a couple spritz. So I'm gonna move my painting because otherwise I'm gonna make a mess of my workspace. Okay, so I just gave it about 2 to 3 squirts on my water bottle.
I just got a
And-
bunch of green all over my sky.
Oh no, from what?
Hand. I set
Oh,
my
no.
hand on it and I had bright emerald green and red all
Take a
over.
moment to wipe it out, honey. Take a damp brush and gently lift the color, dab out with paper towel, and then blow dry it and then come back. You're not gonna wanna paint it while it's damp, okay? All right, so everybody else, I've gotten my palette ready and I've gotten cerulean blue ready on my palette. It's my lighter blue. I'm gonna take diagonal strikes. I'm going right through that lighthouse because that's the background. I'm adding a little bit of cobalt wherever I want a little bit more darkness. I'm going to add a little bit of permanent rose into that blue, and you'll see that it's just a very lovely light purple. This is my first time painting on this paper, so we'll see how this this paper holds up.
Did you wet the paper before you started doing the sky?
I wetted it with the water bottle. I did not wet it in any other fashion. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, that was kind of a bad answer. That came out sloppier than I intended. But like I said, if you have no squirt bottle and you're curious how to paint this without the squirt bottle, you can hold off a second and I will paint it again. I will also paint it again without the purple, and you'll see that it's just fine without it. You don't need it. Make sure that you're imagining that there's a shape that extends behind your lighthouse. So I put purple here, so I put purple over here too, because I imagined that there's the same shape going right behind it. Leave white quite often in your painting. I am not filling in the whole thing. I'm deliberately leaving big pieces of white. It's sort of like you're painting negatively. So you're kind of applying the color around where you want a quote unquote cloud to be. Ooh, that's dark. I do far less clouds though towards the bottom. Bear that in mind. I think most of your clouds, like your puffies, will be towards the top. And as you get closer down to the bottom, I don't think there'll be any. Okay, so that's done. You see, I did that really fast. I did not spend very much time. I'm gonna swap him out. And I'm gonna paint this one. So this is gonna be my really quick brushed sky. So most of you probably don't have a squirt bottle. So this is for everybody else. I'm also going to use a totally different color. I'm going to use a bright blue this time because I think I want to show you what it's going to look like if you have a completely different blue. Like completely. I'm wiping my palette out. Okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take my brush and I'm going to very quickly wet. This other downside, you have to move very fast if you guys don't have a squirt bottle. We do not want a sopping sky. So when you're applying the water, nothing intense, just like really fast. And then I always double apply the water right before I paint towards the top, because that's usually the last, or I should say, that's the first bit I painted, so it's gonna be drying on me. Okay, I'm gonna grab my like Prussian-y, indigo-y color, so it's probably one of those weirder ones you guys might have on your palette. I'm watering it down, so I'm thinning it. I'm going to do exactly the same movement that I did before. I'm doing a little sort of diagonal, so I'm doing it at an angle. I'm not using any pink, but I might throw in, you guys, a little bit of my alizarin, just so you can see, because most of you have alizarin in your palette, as I recall. Oh, I wonder if I forgot my railing. Don't forget your railing, you guys. I think I forgot my railing on one side. There's this little section of railing on the left and the right that is sky. I think I forgot it in my other one. I'm gonna have to go back and fix that. I'm gonna grab a little of my alizarin, and I'm gonna pop a little bit of the darker purple in some of the corners. That's kind of what I viewed the purple as, you guys, as sort of like a darker shadow. Mr. John, yes.
I was going to tell you that we're about 1 hour in.
Oh my gosh. Did we really spend like 45 minutes talking about paint?
Yeah, but it was good.
You know,
It was really
and
good.
tracing and
Well, I
getting
told you it would
everybody
take
set
2
up on
sittings.
getting everybody set up on their equipment at their own house, really for the first time ever. And then, yeah, talking about paint, and then talking about spray bottle and which kind of tape. So this was not a small beginning, you know.
No, and I feel like this should get quicker for us as we go along. I think this is just our first time doing a complicated painting. Now, you guys will notice I am not leaving as many white puffy clouds because it's harder to do with a brush technique. So I'm just adding darker tones in some areas and lighter tones in other areas. So be playing with that aspect and less about clouds, if that makes sense. Anyway, I was going to ask you, Mr. John, can you, I know it's really wet. Is it too glary, or can you see the image okay? Is it coming out?
It does have a little glare, but you can see it. I think you can see it okay.
Because I know I'm also painting really lightly, and I want to make sure you guys can see it. So last thing to sort of mull over as you guys are painting, do not overwork the sky. The sky is its most beautiful when you leave it alone. So I haven't gone back up here, if you guys have noticed. I've painted it and I have left it alone. If you go back, you're going to ruin it. And it's most beautiful if you basically take one stab at it. That's it. No more layers. Leave it alone. And watercolor artists do go back. I'm not saying never, ever go back. But in the beginnings of your watercoloring techniques, it's very easy to ruin it by going back. So I'm just telling you, don't go back. Okay. So I did that really fast just so you could see it, but here was the sky done. Try it's a little glary, but that's the sky done without a squirt bottle. I think it's still pretty. It's just got some different sort of textures to it. Hopefully if it dries a little bit more, we can see it closer up before we're end today, but I'm gonna swap him out because he's just my test painting. Okay. Okay. So that was the first major piece that we worked on that now we're gonna have to blow dry. So after you have completed your sky, I want you guys to get your hair dryer and I want you to blow dry your whole sky, and then we'll begin working on the next steps inside the lighthouse. So if Mr. John, if you could mute me for a minute, I'm gonna blow dry and we'll be right back.
Mine is super streaky and I don't know what to do about it.
What's freaky, and show me, let me see.
It's like streaky because my paintbrush, I don't know, but like it's taped, so I can't really.
Streaky usually means, honey, there wasn't enough water, but without being there, I can't tell you exactly, but streaky usually means not enough water.
My hair dryer isn't working.
Oh no, always check the, I don't know what that's called.
Dang it, I ripped it.
Yeah, no, it happens, honey. Hold up a little higher, let me see. It is a little streaky. That's not bad though. I think it looks cool. That actually reminds me of a style. I'm trying to remember who the painter is.
I mean, I like it, but it's just different than what we're doing, so.
Right. Regardless, when we're done today, I want everyone to be painting skies. Like get your card, get your paper, cut it in either half or quarters, and try your sky technique over and over and over. Just because this is a hard technique to do, and I know I threw a curveball at you guys. Skies are not easy, so this was a hard one. but without knowing and watching you paint it, Addison, I can't tell you 100%, but I'm gonna bet you money that it was probably you didn't have enough water. Most likely. Okay.
Mine is not working at all. It just, not my hair dryer, the paint. It's it looks more like people running by really, really fast. Oh, blurry.
So it sounds like you have the same problem that Miss Addison had. What is the texture? Is that the paper, honey? Is it bubbling on you? Like, I mean, is it pilling on you? Do you know what pilling is? You have to unmute yourself, Celeste.
It's not pilling, but I'm using a really bad kind of paper. It is this.
Can you find anywhere where it says pounds? Like LB? You're muted again, so you have to unmute yourself if you're talking, honey.
I'm not talking, I can't see it anywhere.
That's a sign. If you can't see the pound symbol immediately, it's probably a lower end of quality. So that's okay. So that just means that, yes, that's probably your paper in this instance, Celeste. So you probably pegged that right on. If your paper is a lower pound and it's just not a higher of a quality, it can't take the water as much and it's more sensitive. So that's something I haven't talked a lot about. So everybody, especially right now, we all are using vastly different papers. You're gonna have to experiment with your papers. You may have to do this project again just to get used to your paper. Your paper might be on the lower end of quality, which is okay. It just means it has a temperament and you get to know the temperament of your paper. So if your paper is very temperamental, what that usually means is a couple things. One, you have to work like the wind, like Speedy Gonzalez, go fast. Because if you spend like la la la, you're just painting, every stroke you do is damaging the paper. And it can't absorb very much water. And then you're stroking it and now the paper is falling apart. So it just can go downhill really fast. So if your paper is a lower quality, you just need to move faster and not over wet it. If you over wet it, it's gonna cause you more problems. So this is all good. We're all learning about our papers right now. I'm gonna blow dry mine and then we'll get going on the next step. Blow dry. All right. My paper was practically dry. We talked so long, it was already dry. Okay, you guys ready? We'll paint a little bit more. Are there any other huge questions that need to be addressed before we move on? Like anything going terribly wrong? It's 3:40, okay.
What happens
No.
if you get some blue on your lighthouse and it's kind of dark?
Where and how much would be the question. It's not necessary.
By the windows and a lot.
So like by this window here,
The top. Kind of like the skinnier part.
this little skinny sliver.
No, like up where there's like a lot of, yeah.
Up here.
Mm-hmm.
So let's take a look real quick. So there is a couple parts of this lighthouse. So you'll see these little bands. There's a band here and there's a band here. So above this band, this bottom band, this is all sky. So if you've got blue in here, not a problem. if there's this little section right behind the railing, that's your lighthouse. So if you got a ton of blue right here, and by ton, I mean like really dark, take a moment and take it out, because it needs to not be there. But if you only have a little bit, and it's over here, especially on the left, because we have more shadow on the left than we do the right, then you're fine. Okay, so if you got it over there, you're fine. If it's over here, take a moment to take it out. And how you take it out is you lightly get some water in your brush and you just gently do little circular motions until it lifts out. And then take your paper towel and dab, do not rub, and then dry it. You can't work on it after it's wet. And it doesn't matter anyway, we'll leave that area alone. We're working down here. Answer your question? Maybe? Okay, I'm assuming yes. Okay.
Oh, Miss Hannah?
Yeah.
I'm having some paintbrush troubles here. I'm like painting and there's bits falling off my paintbrush into what I'm painting.
Oh.
And I don't have another brush.
Oh no. Do you think it's gonna survive even for this hour?
It might.
Okay.
But it's really worn. I need to
Yeah.
grab the newer ones. I forgot. I grabbed one of the older ones.
Okay. Well, if you want to take a moment and go grab a different brush, it might
They're
be
on the
able to move
bar.
you. Oh, okay. So next time, just keep
Yeah.
going for now. We'll do it next time.
Okay.
Okay, so we're gonna start painting our actual lighthouse, you guys. So this is where your color mixing techniques need to come in handy again. I want you to grab out either cerulean blue if you have it. If you don't have it, we're gonna be using ultramarine blue, but we're gonna be using really, really light. So you're gonna water it way down. So those are the colors that we're gonna use. So my first preference is cerulean. If you don't have cerulean, then it's gonna be ultramarine.
I don't have ultramarine.
Do you have cobalt? Do you have cerulean?
I have something like cobalt. It's called cobalt, but it's kind of grayish.
It's called cobalt, but it looks gray. Well, we'll have to just try it. So without seeing, oh, it's Artist Loft. Okay, I haven't used Artist Loft in a long time, so I can't speak to what the color looks like. But you might have like a Prussian sort of situation going on, or an indigo.
How light are we talking for the ultramarine? Like
Very
really
light. Yep. Like barely there light. And the reason I say barely light is I'd rather it be cerulean. My cerulean is really light. And ultramarine is just a darker pigment, so it's harder to get that way. Okay, I'm going to wet with water. We're going to start in the far left panel, and we're going to paint the entire panel. So from the top all the way down to the bottom, we're going to be painting it with water first. I was trying to think whether or not I want to do blue first or if I want to do tan first. Oh well, I'm going for it. And I'm going right over the area that will be red, so don't worry about it. This is why you can tell this is not going to matter if you get blue into this area, because I'm putting blue down anyway. Okay, area 1. While that's drying, we're going to move somewhere else. That way we don't have to use our hairdryer too many times. So I actually was thinking about it and while I painted the blue, but it's fine. I already made you do it. If we're looking at the lighthouse picture, there is quite a bit of tan. So this is not white. And I don't know how much shows up on the video, but this is not white. It's very, very light brown red. And we're going to be taking this in here eventually, but also up in here. And that's where we're going to paint next, is up here. So I'm going to grab, this is where our browns and our reds come into play. Does everyone have burnt sienna or umber?
I do.
Good. So we're looking really light, like a really light brown.
Which do you prefer?
I prefer sienna if you have it, but umber will work.
Did you add something to it, or are you watering it down?
No, that was just water, but we are going
wow.
to add something to it. So I put a lot of water into it. And so this is the same color as that. So quite a difference, a lot of water. I'm gonna add a little bit of yellow into it. And now I've just made it slightly warmer. So it's like a very light, warm, yellowy brown. You could also add a little red. I think my first one probably had a little bit of red into it, but I don't want to make this too complicated. So we're just doing a little bit of brown and yellow. Very, very light. We do not want this very pigmented. Okay. After you get that color ready, we're going to be painting that in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add water to the whole little area. This is a little sliver of the lighthouse behind the railing. So I'm just going to wet this with water. Now I know I said I wanted to do maybe the door with the last 15 minutes or so with class. Does that even interest anybody, or should we just keep working on this?
Well, I have to go at 4, so.
Well, that's when we're ending anyway, so we'll be done.
I think we should keep working on this.
Okay. Since nobody said door.
Me too.
Me too. Okay, good. So I've concentrated the color towards the left side. This is, I want you guys to be thinking about this for the whole picture. The left side is where more of the shadow is. So when I painted this, I kept most of the color towards the left, and then I just gently sort of softened it towards the right. Okay. All right, I'm moving on again, you guys. So I'm gonna start painting up towards the top of the lighthouse, and we're gonna introduce a new color. So that burnt sienna, if you have it, is my preferred color. If you don't have it, umber will work. I'm gonna mix sienna and blue together. Whatever blue you have will work. Mine is going to be, I think, cobalt, but ultramarine is also an excellent color for this. We're making gray. So when I mix the two colors together, do you see how I get a very sort of gray color? It's very gray. You can always tint this either direction, more brown and more blue, depending on the strength of your mixture. I think I'm gonna go more towards brown, just because I want a little warmer. There we go. See, it's a little different. It's a little warmer than the first one. And that's gonna go in here. So what we're looking at our dome right now, everybody. So if you look at the dome of your lighthouse, and you might have to look up real quick, just so you can see where I'm pointing to. There's this little under part of the dome. Do we see that? So it's not the cap of the dome, it's underneath of the dome. We're gonna wet that, and we're gonna paint the whole under area with the light gray. I totally skipped a step. I didn't wet it. Just I'm going to paint it again while it's wet, and I'm going to add in a little bit more shadow towards the top. So it's kind of wet into wet just a little bit. Okay. Okay, this will only work if everyone's painting is moderately wet, so not like sopping wet. If you're sopping wet, don't do this, blow dry it first. I'm gonna be painting the sort of, this is a deck of the, I don't know, the railing area. I'm just gonna paint it raw umber. No, I'm sorry, burnt sienna, but a very light layer of burnt sienna. And I'm gonna paint this whole deck area that color. But it is touching something that's a little bit wet. So if this area here or this area here is sopping, it's gonna bleed too much.
What if you don't have burnt sienna?
What brown do you have?
Burnt umber.
Burnt umber work. You're gonna have to thin it down a lot. Burnt umber is pretty dark. Okay. You can see this is gonna take a while. Okay. I'm gonna keep hopping down just because we're doing lots of little simple things right now. I have given this enough time to dry. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add in that really, really light sort of yellowy red color, and I'm gonna paint all 3 of these panels. So I'm gonna do a little mixing, you guys. You guys are gonna have to practice mixing and get the color that you need. So I'm going to mix together sienna, teeny bit of yellow, and a teeny tiny bit of red. And I say teeny, teeny. Do you see it almost looks peachy on the camera? And it's really, really light, okay? You want like just a kiss of color, not too much. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm going to wet 1, 2, 3 panels with just water. And I can go right over my little, I don't know what it's, trusses or something like that, supports. I can go right over that because they're gonna be darker. Lena has a question.
Yes. So are we going over this part with that pinkish color now? Pinkish? The color
3
we just-
panels. Yep, 3 panels. So the panel from the far right, 1, 2, 3 over, all 3.
So the third panel?
You're just not
The
going
middle,
over
the
blue
middle
one.
one? The, mi-
Yep,
the middle
all
one?
of them but the blue one.
Okay.
So all 3 panels for me right now. There's 4 panels total on this lighthouse. All 3 just got tinted with a very light beigey color. And it should be very light, you guys. If it's too dark, it won't read as white. White sometimes is not white. I feel like I didn't draw one of the panels.
One of my my water is very murky, and my water is very murky and reddish. So it really put a lot of pigment in mine. and it's pretty orangey.
Yep. I think I mentioned it at the beginning of class, but I don't know if you were not here for it, honey. At any point, you guys just dump your water out, grab fresh. Because if your container gets really dirty, absolutely, it will tint every color you make. So always grab fresh water. Ooh, hope that's for drinking, not painting, Emma. Holding up water while I'm talking about it. Gross. Okay. I think my cap area can take it. I'm gonna paint the top of my cap now. If yours is very sopping wet, do not do this. Blow dry first and then come back. I think I'll be okay. So I'm just gonna go for it. And if I do have a little bit of bleeding, I'll be fine with it. So I'm gonna paint my cap that same mixture of cobalt blue and brown, but I'm gonna go way heavier on the brown. So it's still slightly gray, but I want it to be very, very warm. You guys can see it's very warm. Maybe even a little bit more brown. There we go. Very warm gray brown. All right, so I'm gonna paint all of the dome and my little circle thingy. And I'm pretty pleased overall with this paper. When I painted the lighthouse the first time, you guys, I painted with my preferred paper, which is Arches. I really like that paper, but it's expensive, so that might not be very feasible for us. So far, this paper's been good.
Did she wet it first? Doesn't look like it.
Yeah, I'm not. I decided against it because it's so little.
Oh.
But if you guys are working slowly, you're gonna want to wet it first. But I know, I didn't do it. Okay, I'm gonna add shadow while it's wet. So I'm just grabbing more cobalt and more sienna, so it's getting really dark. I know you can't see my palettes off camera, but I'm coming back and I'm gonna tap in the right side. You see it's dark. And I'm just gonna add that in and really get some beautiful shadow. I'm also gonna put it on the little ball. Okay. Beautiful. While I have that color out, I'm gonna stick more towards the brown again. I noticed I didn't draw it real thick, but I want you guys to look on camera with me really quickly. Do you see how there's a top rung of that railing? And then there's this middle rung of the railing. That middle rung is supposed to be a little thicker, and I totally forgot to draw it. So I'm gonna just, right now with my paint, I'm gonna go over it, and I'm gonna make it a little thicker. So I'm holding my brush almost straight up and down in order to get the detail, because this is really tiny. Ooh, not bad.
Miss Anna?
Yep.
It's about 4 o'clock, but we had told people, you know, we could go till 4:30, but that's up to you, whatever you want to do.
How about we take a poll? What do you guys want? I know, Lena, you said you had to leave. Everybody else do 4, so you're done?
Yeah.
That sounds like a tired yeah. How about everybody else?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go right now.
Well, I know you have to go. Your vote doesn't count.
Yeah, all right.
But thank you, Lena. So I probably will just call it, you guys. That way we're not too far ahead of you, Lena, for next time. So we'll see you later, honey. Bye. So what do you guys think? Are we good? Do we need to work a little bit more?
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, Celeste. That was you're leaving. Bye, Jenna.
Bye.
Shauna's done.
Okay, so Miss
I think we'll
Anna,
be done. It sounds like we're done. Yeah.
do you think we should just wait until next Tuesday to do the next part then?
I think so. That would be easiest, I would think. Otherwise, we have to schedule in another time. But I don't know. What do you guys want?
Tuesday?
Okay,
Yeah, probably Tuesday.
Okay. So I think here's the thing. I think by next week, everybody, we ate up a ton of time drawing it and talking about the paint. I fully expect that we will get through a lot more of it. I actually think it'll be done by next week because we'll skip all that part. Now, for everybody else, if there's anybody watching with us still on YouTube, catch up. I want you guys to work on sketching it out or tracing it out and watercolor up to where we stopped today. And then if you guys want to, you can still join us next week to finish it. So thank you everybody for watching. We'll see you guys next week for the, I guess, part 2. Bye.